Hello, everybody. Welcome to Leaders Talk Communications. We are live. I'm speaking today with Pete Martinez, and it's such a pleasure to talk to you today. I just can't wait to get into it. I met Pete last year at Emerge Americas through my son, actually. Remember that? We were talking about that. Um,
Yep.
Pete had a rock star employee who he has just told me still works for him, who's a student at the University of Miami, where my son also went to school, and they knew one another. And they were chatting at the conference, and my son was actually trying to help a friend network and get connected to other folks. Um, that friend, by the way, got a great position, Pete. I thought you might want to know that. Anyway, even though, I can't explain all of it, I was just fascinated by the work that you're doing to diagnose genetic diseases. And the young man who works for you was explaining it to me, and he was just so amazing. At the time, I think the focus was on children, but maybe that's changed and evolved and expanded. We can talk
Expanded.
about
Yeah.
that. That's what I
Yep.
thought. So, a
hmm
fun fact, I really love telling the story about how my son chatted you up at that conference. I was really proud of him. He was a really shy kid growing up, and I was just kind of standing back watching him talk to you there. And anyway, it was just a really proud mama moment. But I love telling that story. Like, Patrick was chatting people up and networking, and he's in his first year of med school now. And anyway, it was just really fun seeing the two of you. Thank you.
Excellent. Excellent.
Engage with one another. I'm really honored that you took the time to talk to him. So I'm so
That's where
happy
I
to chat
learned.
with.
That's how I
Yeah,
learned.
right. That's how we keep fresh too. I'm so happy to speak with you, Pete. You are a leader and a trailblazer. You've been at the forefront of some profound technological advancements. Um, and I know this because I read your bio, including, early personal computing initiatives at IBM. You've led billion-dollar enterprises and groundbreaking research collaborations, and I think you got a few patents under your belt. Is that right? Yeah. So yeah, I'm not worthy to be speaking to you. Throughout your career, you have obviously had to communicate clearly and coherently with multiple different stakeholders, and I know that's continuing today with your work that you're doing. Leaders Talk Communications is all about that, understanding how executives manage communications at their business or at their nonprofit. My goal is to have other leaders hear your stories, your challenges, your successes with communications, and get insights from you so they can better navigate their own leadership communication. And also, I want communications professionals like me to hear what's on the mind of leaders like you as it relates to communication so that we can better serve and support you. So let's jump in, and thank you very much again for being here. So I want to make sure that I am pronouncing the name of your company correctly. I want you to tell us about, is it SIVOTEC? SIVOTEC?
Sivotec.
SIVOTEC. Okay.
Sivotec. So Sivotec stands
SIVOTEC.
for signatures in vivo, signatures in the living through technology. Your signature being your
Ah,
genomic signature, your biochemical, your anatomical signature. So it's exactly
ah.
what we're doing. It's we're understanding the human condition through technology and actually integrating it from multiple lines.
Okay, awesome. So I want you to get a little bit more into it. Tell us about the work that you're doing, any new thing that you want to discuss, and then I want to know what inspires you the most about the work that you're doing at Sivotech.
Well, first, let me start off with the importance of communications in the professional environment, because this is one of the areas that gets completely understated. We tend to think of communication being oral and written. There's also an emotional factor to communication, which is typically not understood, but yet one of the more critical elements. And in this area of automation and very AI communication type of, we lose the personal touch, which is probably the most effective and the most enduring in terms of any kind of relationship. So it's the
Mm,
total package and being able to envelope that within the your persona that becomes very, very key. So that has always been a key element of my behavior. I was at IBM, I was surrounded by the brightest people in the world
yeah.
because they were very technological involved, their communication was not often the secret sauce that they had. So my
Yeah.
my value was actually in the simplicity of the communication, the simplification of a message, of a product, of a
Ah.
discipline, and everything else, and bringing it forward. I always tell the people, said, look, you give a man a fish, he will eat for a day. You give a Cuban a microphone, he will talk for a lifetime.
I love it. All right, well, let me reel you in, Mr. Cubano. I love that, and so when you say personal communication, you're talking about that inner, that person to person, and I also love that you talked about the importance of simplifying messages, complex messages. That is so key, both for internal communication with employees and especially externally with customers. But before we jump into it, I really do want to hear what inspires you most about the work that you do, that you're doing at SIVOTEC. Is very important work. What is it that lights your fire and gets you up every day about your work?
I was blessed by 32 years at IBM, being surrounded by some of the brightest people and some of the most important technologies of our world. Think of it. I was in for 32 years. I was part of the original robotics mission of IBM, the original personal computer. I was engineering manager. I was part of the original development of the internet. I was part of
Mm,
supercomputers. I was part of it. And I was
that's
in the
amazing.
AI. Actually, I was working in AI back in 1989.
Yeah.
However, this is probably the most important thing. When I got to 30 years plus with the business, I was pretty decent place in the org chart. But for the most part, my days were financial reviews and HR problems. I did not
Mm,
like my job. As a matter of
wow.
fact, the things that I enjoyed the most, which was learning, it's the entrepreneurship, the working with small teams and completely innovating, that was lost in the size of
Mm,
my organization. So I
yeah.
did
Because
a
the
deep
higher up you
search.
go.
Oh, completely. And I mean,
Yeah.
it's good for about 2 seconds, your position in the org chart, but it lasts 2 seconds and then the reality hits you. And it's that. So
Yeah.
I got to a point in time that said, in this phase of my life, I want to reinvent myself and consider the things that are important. So actually, I walked out at the top of my game at IBM. I was vice president of the consulting business. I was the senior executive in Florida. And I said, in this phase, I want to dedicate myself to two very important societal impact. One is education, and the other one is healthcare.
Mm,
I'm not going to become a
wow.
teacher. I'm not going to become a doctor, but I'll figure out a way to throw a hard punch at it. So,
Yeah.
as the career path would have it, I leveraged what I knew about technology to actually use it as a catalyst in healthcare and education. So through a bunch of different partnerships and connections, we started bringing AI to the world of genomics. Genomics is
Mm-hmm.
probably the most difficult and rarely understood by the health profession. But we said, what if we use the AI to actually simplify that model, make it faster, more accurate, more repeatable, but much more accessible to a much larger population breadth. So we have now done 162,000 cases of kids with rare genetic diseases across 40 countries.
Oh my
That,
goodness.
yeah,
When you say done, you mean you've diagnosed them and
analyzed it. Yeah,
discovered and
absolutely. Yeah,
analyzed them. Okay,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah. So we
Tell
work with
like,
a, yeah. Mhm.
define very, very briefly, just for folks who don't know, what genomics is.
Yeah. Genomics is your DNA. Your DNA is the
Right.
architecture of your body. It gives you all of the condition present and potentially future about your system. However, when things go wrong, they create some of the most complex diseases, normally known as rare diseases. There's
Yeah.
7,300 of those. And to actually identify one of these things normally takes about 5 to 7 years. And on a
Mm,
child, that is brutal because it's 7 years of developmental distress
right.
that they're going through, not only themselves, but the family. I mean, the expense of these things. So, what we did was actually codify the minds of some highly, highly skilled geneticists, put it into algorithms, and then accelerated the overall diagnostic process. So we work with the
Wow.
laboratories. The laboratories do the swab, the cheek, the whatever it is. We take the output of them, and then we provide that to geneticists, to physicians, to actually analyze the case. So ultimately, they're making the decision. Okay, so we provide decision support, but we're helping them make the decision a whole lot faster, much more accurate, and with much more data.
Wow. You've got like this collective mind share and you're using that to inform that. Oh, wow. Okay. I remember now from our conversation. Thank you so much for sharing
And the
that.
way you said
So
it
can
was,
I
yeah,
go ahead? Go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah. The way you said it is exactly right. It's the collective wisdom of the
Yeah.
international geneticists, because we're not giving a tool to one person to, dig a hole and then forget about it. All 160,000 cases from 1,600 different geneticists are coming through our pipe because it's cloud-based. So we get to see the whole set of cases internationally. And while things we consider to be very, very rare, they're actually not rare when you look at the whole perspectives of it. So,
Well, yeah,
yeah,
interesting. I guess if you're seeing them globally, you're like it does inform, the decision to call it rare or not, right? Oh,
exactly, exactly.
interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to ask one more question about the business, but I know we're supposed to talk about communications, but this just occurred to me. How does one like what's the end game for SIVOTEC technology? Like how would, future doctors like access the technology to help them in their diagnoses? What is
Fabulous
tell me a
question.
bit.
Yeah, fabulous question. Because right now there are only 3,500 geneticists in this country. There are 1 million
Oh,
non-geneticists, primary
oh
care,
wow.
pediatrics, specialists. So how do we bring this type of platform to the masses? So what we did
Yeah.
was, while we started off with the geneticists to actually verify the science and the technology, now we actually stripped off the genetics portion of it and now providing the same platform, but for the non-geneticists. In other words, you can
Oh,
diagnose for a potential genetic condition without having the genetic code. Just by the clinical symptoms, it's, you had headaches, you had fever, you had this, you had that. Is there a potential genetic condition? And if such, what is it? And test
whoa.
now to validate. So all of a sudden, moving from 7 years out to day one. And the day one
Oh
is
my
so
gosh.
important. Yeah, the day one is so important because if your initial diagnosis was off, you're going to miss the moon by millions of miles. Okay. So
Mm,
getting that
mm.
first one right, at least, 90% right,
Yeah.
incredibly important.
Wow. Okay, thank you. Thank you for going into that. That's fascinating. I initially asked you what inspires you most about your role, but I think you've just described it. I'm so inspired myself now. All right. So talk to me a bit in this work that you're doing, Pete. You obviously have to connect and communicate with different stakeholders, employees, geneticists, probably supplier people, like, um, and you've got to engage with them, you've got to influence them, you got to inspire them to take whatever action there is that you want them to take. When I talk about strategic communications, I always talk about the fact that it is grounded in ultimately the need to get someone to do something, support a piece of legislation, buy a product, vote, engage more with the mission. And it takes a special, I think, set of skills and leadership to be able to move people along in that way. Where do you feel you thrive as Pete Martinez in communicating and connecting with those different stakeholders? And as you answer that question, I want you to talk a bit about David, because I think it's so wonderful that you are, first of all, that you're focused on education and healthcare and that you found a way to link those things. But we met through David, your employee who who went to school with my son. And so I think communicating across generations is, I said this to you earlier that people give Gen Z such a bad rap, but I am fascinated by Gen Z Z. I think they're brilliant. So anyway, as you talk about how you thrive as Pete in connecting with those different stakeholders, bring that into your
Yeah, a beautiful
testimony as
question.
well.
Beautiful question. So at the core of it is there are three principles related to communications. First, the listening skill. This is probably that's most
Yeah.
missed. Most people think it's just about the talking. The listening is a very key factor. The second one is making it about them, not about you. And the third
Mm,
is contextualizing what you want our relationship to be all about, whether it be business or relationship. How does that feel? One of the things that when you bring it into context of what I'm doing now, I get to work with scientists, technologists, and entrepreneurs. They
mm-hmm.
have very, very different mindsets. So my role is actually play pivot for all of these and actually translate from scientific terms to business terms, from technology terms to scientific terms across all of them. It's a challenge because you got to be at least waist deep in terms of what their businesses or their philosophies, their discipline are all about, but
Mm,
provide enough of a hook to, like you said, the motivation, the leadership, and ultimately get a product to market. Okay.
right.
Think of most businesses are based off of either a very good scientific idea or technology idea, but they missed the third one, which is the business to get it to market. You cannot have two out
Mm,
of three and be successful. So one
right.
of the things that we put a lot of emphasis on is the commercial viability of these great, great ideas that we have. So part of my play is provide both the connection but the leadership. The second point that you were on was the Gen Z factor. I
Mm-hmm.
consider this where fresh blood meets gray hair. Okay,
Yeah.
the things that these young people are doing now, I have never seen before. I have never seen the speed. I wouldn't know how to start. I did a lot of development of some heavy duty stuff. I've never seen development happen so fast with so much complexity and also some results. So the way that
Really?
people,
And
oh
you
yeah,
mean, and you're talking about outside of AI?
completely, completely.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
the whole notion of open sources and data libraries and everything else, people, the way that's put together is absolutely fascinating. However, most of these young folks, for them, the world started in 2023 with ChatGPT. Well, a
Yeah.
lot happened before that. So the ones that
Yeah.
are mature enough to understand that something happened prior and are willing to say, hey, let's leverage that level of discipline, insight, and thought process to actually take our ideas further. So last summer, what we did was bring in six really, really bright individuals, including David. And they said, okay, here's the task, here's the vision, make it work. And what they did in 10 weeks was absolutely insane. And we're just
Wow.
dumbfounded going, how did this happen? So we actually hired them. We hired them. Some of them were still in
Yeah.
school, some had just graduated, but we hired them and we gave them very important positions. What they are doing now, I would challenge a $1 billion company to actually come close to what's being affected. And what we did was
Wow.
unleash their creativity, provide them the
Mm-hmm.
support, provide them guidelines, provide them a
Provide them the
level of
support. Yeah.
the support, the encouragement, but also provide guidance that said, yeah, turn your head a little bit here because and they accept it. They accept it. They will
Wow.
call you after a meeting and they said, how can I do better? What did I do wrong? How do I improve myself? Oh my God.
They're
So
asking those questions.
they're asking those questions
Yeah.
because they see themselves improving from those kind of counseling, that type of conversation, because we do it not in hey, you got to do that, that. We make it fun, we make it interactive, but we also learn from them. That respect of
Mhm.
them, because we know that we can't do our thing without them, and make them part of the overall mind meld incredibly. So it's where fresh
Right.
blood meets gray hair, big time.
Wow, I love that. Oh my goodness. And so You talked about the three ways of communication, and the last was on, I think well, when you the last one was it that you
Emotional.
make it about no, you talked about contextualizing the relationship and what it is that
Yes. Yeah.
you both want from the relationship. And so
Hmm.
how are you, when I ask, where you feel you thrive in communicating with these different stakeholders, do you go into a conversation or to an engagement, thinking ahead of time of what you want the relationship to be? Is it something that evolves naturally? How does that context evolve for you? I don't know if I'm asking the right question, but I'm just trying to understand, like,
And,
it
yeah,
for
and
you.
actually, yeah, actually, I go with a very open mind without a predefined solution to it, and this is it
Mm,
keeps the eyes completely open because you never know. Think of innovation happens at the intersection of disciplines, at the intersection of ideas. Okay, if somebody is
mm,
a specialist, they're typically working on perfecting an idea. The moment you bring an engineer and a doctor together, the innovation is going to happen where they meet. Okay,
mhm.
that's
No,
very,
yeah,
very important. Yeah. And think of
yeah,
the Florence during the Renaissance. What made the Renaissance happen was the confluence of ideas from multiple ways. You had the alchemists
yeah,
working their way, the
science,
architect.
art, yeah,
Exactly. So I
yeah,
go into conversations wide open. I never turn down a conversation to talk and listen to people, primarily because I don't know where it's going to come from, and they could have just one little nugget that adds to the overall pie. So after that, we start shaping it up and giving form. So by the time we get done with we said, hey, yeah, here's how we're going to fit or not. It's
yeah.
important to walk away from some things that are not going to go somewhere. But the ones that do, absolutely, you just nurture them and empower them and make them quick and make decisions quicker and get things going fast.
Wow. So, we're like 20 minutes in. I tell people these conversations are usually going to last 15 minutes, but another question occurred to me that I'm going to go off a little bit of off my usual questions. And because you mentioned this earlier, about being Cuban American, and I am curious how you feel your cultural background influences the way you communicate as a leader.
Very interesting. And consider that anybody is willing to come to this country and drop everything behind, and which was my parents. We came over in 1961 from Cuba, and
Yeah.
fortunately, parents with tremendous education. But we came over with $20 and two suitcases. When you're 6 years old, 7 years old, you don't have an appreciation of what that is. But the further you get develop in your lifetime, you recognize the struggle, the values, and the determination of your parents. So that's actually part of my DNA, but it's something that I also learned. So that torch of driving really hard. I mean, this is a land of opportunity. You study hard, you work hard, you're going to succeed. So just pick whatever path you want, and you're going to be successful. So what I thrive on is the opportunity to one create for a better country, a better society, a better uh, human condition for all of us. But second,
Mhm.
how do I pass it on to the next generation within my family, my kids, my grandkids, but also to the folks that I'm involved with, the young people that I mentor and such. So I
Yeah.
think there's twofold responsibility: my personal growth, but the personal growth of others, because
Yeah.
that's what actually creates a better society for all of us.
All right, thank you. All right, let's switch tacks a bit and talk about challenges. We've all had communications challenges. Tell us about one of the most prominent that you faced as a leader and how you handled it, Pete.
This one is always top of mind. So one time back in IBM days, I'm working with some really supercomputing type of stuff. We have a personal computer that is outrunning some of the best supercomputers in the world. And the applications are everything from neural networks to imaging to oil exploration and such. So it's massive. One of the applications was actually to what's called fractal geometry. It's highly, highly numeric intensive, but in essence, the screen just explodes in colors and colors and colors, and it's absolutely wild.
Mm.
The geeks of this world really appreciated the same because, oh my God, the amount of computing that is going on. So I'm giving a presentation to a bunch of really, really sophisticated folks, and they're all mesmerized by what's going on. I hit the wrong button, and the screen goes white. And
Oh
everybody goes,
no.
and I go, ladies and gentlemen, I realize what just happened. Ladies and gentlemen, we've just gotten to a point that we've never been before. And they go, oh my God, oh my God. So
They were excited about it.
they were excited. It was just turned tragedy into a positive thing. But the
Yeah.
message here is very, very important. They don't know what you're presenting. You're the only one that knows what your presentation is about. I had
Yes.
a friend from MIT said, engineers speak about the hole in their sock. Nobody knows you have a hole in the sock, but somehow you're
Yeah.
going to tell people they have it in the sock. So the the
Yeah.
ability to actually turn everything around. Whenever I give a presentation, nobody knows what I'm going to say. That's why I never use slides or anything else. Nobody knows what I'm going to say. I can say anything, and then as long as I'm able to follow it up, there are no mistakes here. So I
That's such a great lesson. Oh my gosh, it's true. Nobody knows what you're going to present. Yeah, it's such a great point. They won't know that you flubbed. They don't know that you. Oh my gosh, that's great. Okay. Um, when I think I see you posting a bit on LinkedIn, but I like to ask leaders what their favorite platform is. Whether it's a social media platform, or if it's face to face, or if it's phone calls. What is the most successful vehicle or platform that you use that helps you communicate most effectively with the people who are important to the success of SIVOTEC?
Yeah, LinkedIn is incredibly valuable, and it has become a very, very important norm, both for broadcasting out as well as the communication and finding folks. It's a great tool now
Mm,
to find talent, but also broadcast. So it has become a very, very powerful tool. It's probably the best in terms of business orientation related to it. I see all the happy pictures of people on Facebook and stuff like that. And that's a different thing. So LinkedIn. However, in terms of ingestion of lots and lots of data as well, I receive probably 15, 20 different newsletters, everything from the MIT journals to
mm,
scientific journals and everything else. So it makes it very, very effective. The first half an hour of my day is just reading,
yeah.
and staying up to date. So yeah, it's completely different from the way I grew up in terms of, you have to read the book, you have to get on the call and everything. Now it's just massive absorption. And I use the AI. The AI
Yeah.
is my learning companion. It's my
Mm.
lifelong learning companion. So if I have a question, that's where I go.
Okay. And when
Yeah.
you're connecting with like your employees, the students in your company, or with customers, what do you find that face to face works well for you? Do you use email a lot? Like what do you use to communicate just,
Zoom. Yeah, Zoom
oh,
and these things have been a blessing primarily because a lot of it, and during COVID, it became very, very much an operational guide. We would have
mhm.
shut down business if it were
Yeah,
not for it. So, yeah, these
yeah,
kind of platforms become very, very efficient because if I had to get in the car every time I got to meet somebody or get on a
yeah,
plane, but so in a week, the number of international calls that I will have is absolutely insane. We've got a large project going on now with a very large continent that I have never been to, but
yeah,
the relationship is become very, very key. So being
yeah,
able to project your persona in the virtual world is also very interesting because
yeah.
you don't have the touch, you don't have, but yet if you can develop that trusted relationship through the virtual media, that's incredibly effective.
Yeah, thank you. That's great. Okay, my last question for you is if you could wave a magic wand, what would you want the world to understand most deeply about you or about Sivotech? You can take, I'll give you one of those, you or Sivotech. I would prefer to know about you, but what would you want the world to understand most deeply?
Yeah, that I'm on a passion right now. I am on a tear to improve the human condition. And I actually put that
Mm,
line on every one of my employees' contracts, improve the human condition. Everybody, everything comes later. And I have three things that are driving me right now. The first one is life is like a piñata. The harder you hit it, the more candy comes out. Boom.
mm, yeah.
Second, I didn't know that I couldn't do this. Okay. Nobody told me that I couldn't, that it was
You
impossible.
said I didn't know that I could not do this. That's what you
Exactly.
said? Couldn't.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So it said, no, I'm in no man's land. And since nobody told me I couldn't do it, I'm doing it. And third is don't tell me that I can't do something because I will prove you wrong.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much. This has been such a joy talking to you. Oh my goodness. I appreciate your time so much. I appreciate your wisdom. I appreciate the fact that you were trying to give back and nurture and support society. And the work you're doing is so important. Thank you so much, Pete, for being here
And
today.
thank you for your channel. I mean, these type of opportunities to spread the knowledge to create these greater networks is so vital. So yeah, the moment you offered me this opportunity, I jumped all over it. First, your personality, your wisdom, your approach to this thing is absolutely phenomenal. So
Thank
anything that I can
you.
do for you, count on it because you're an
Thank
amazing person.
you. Thank you so much. Thank you. All right. Take care. Bye bye.
Very good. Bye.